Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the regular board meeting of the Ottawa Catholic School Board for March 9th, 2021. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and I would ask Namir to read the land acknowledgement, please.
As we begin this meeting, let us respectfully acknowledge that the Ottawa Catholic School Board is located on traditional Algonquin and Anishinaabe territory. We acknowledge the Algonquin people's longstanding relationship with this land remains unceded. We also pay respect to all Indigenous people, including the Métis and Inuit from all regions across Canada that call Ottawa home.
Thank you. Well, now, if you could please stand for O Canada.
Oh.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. Car ton bras s'est porté l'épée, il s'est porté la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
I apologize, Father. I messed up the order.
No problem.
If you could lead us in prayer, please.
Okay. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Faithful God, your love for us surpasses all our hopes and desires. We thank you for your constant presence and goodness in our lives. We are grateful for our time together today, and we beg you to bless the work of our hands in the service of your children through the ministry of Catholic education. May we be wise stewards of the gift of Catholic education entrusted to us in this province. May all our efforts be guided by you, bring glory to your name, and find their completion in you. Bless each of us, so that we may be living signs of your love for everyone. And we ask you this through Christ our Lord. Amen. And we pray for our staff and students, extended family members, especially those who have lost their lives due to COVID-19. Agnes Fennell, mother of Sandra Fennell, Behavior Consultant, Special Education and Student Services Department. Joanna Enrica Peters, mother of Kathy McNeil, resource teacher at St. Mary's School. Noel Marshall, father of Nancy Marshall, teacher librarian at St. Cecilia School. Eternal rest grant unto them, O Lord, and let perpetual light shine upon them. May they rest in peace. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Father, very nice to see you and to hear you this evening.
Oh.
Item C on the agenda, school student department profile. We have a memo from the Superintendent of Elementary Student Success, Deep Learning in the Virtual World. Welcome, Superintendent Montgomery.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. I'm just ensuring my guests are on the screen. I'm Miss Summers, and is Joey on here?
He is.
Okay, perfect. So I'm pleased to have with me tonight Samara Summers, our grade 3 virtual teacher, along with Joey Wilkie, one of her students, who will highlight how our social entrepreneur program has been instrumental in showcasing a true deep learning approach to instruction and the impact it has had on student engagement even in a virtual environment. So I will pass it along to Ms. Summers at this time.
Thank you.
And I think Ms. Edwards, Mr. Edwards, the other way.
Thank you, Superintendent Montgomery, and to Mr. Chair for inviting us to speak about our virtual social entrepreneurial project. My name is Samara Summers, and I'm joined by Joey Wilkie, who is a grade 3 student in our virtual class. My past experience with the social entrepreneurship program motivated me to begin a project that I knew would activate deep learning in the virtual classroom. I was fortunate enough to be partnered with Betty Vale as our business coach. It certainly helps to have a positive relationship with your business coach, as we were able to collaborate and model successful strategies for a common goal. We are also deeply grateful for the support, trust, and partnerships we found with the principals of Assumption, Corpus Christi, and St. Bridget schools. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. As a virtual classroom teacher, it became clear to me that we had to find as many tools in our digital toolbox and master them so that we could have a successful business venture. You might think of the virtual classroom as being confined, but through leveraging digital, we were able to seek out and establish positive partnerships in our local community. The idea of reaching out to local businesses was confirmed early on by the students. As we introduced the business concepts, we simultaneously and intentionally addressed the global competencies. We noticed that citizenship, creativity, and collaboration organically came to the forefront. It was early days and everything was so uncertain. Teaching in a virtual school was a huge challenge, and we were operating in such unprecedented times. But we knew this project would calm the students, direct their focus, bring them hope, and take them to a special place. I think this project helped the students to believe in us and believe in themselves so that they could accomplish their common goal. Next slide, please. This slide represents all of our hard work. The students chose the name of the business, and it's called Civitas Smile Bags. The students created the mission statement, and it reads, "Our passion is to make a difference in our community. We are virtual grade 3 learners who partner with local entrepreneurs to offer a curated collection of items that are made in Ottawa. The profits from our business will help support the Ottawa Mission and Fairy Tales Rescue." You will notice on this slide that there are links to local community newspaper articles. The students and their families were especially proud to see their business efforts recognized in the local media. The articles were written by our associate coach, Molly Perkins, who communicated the students' engagement in deep learning and elaborated on the impact of their efforts to build community. Next slide, please. As you can see, we had many partnerships that were developed in this project. For example, on several different occasions, we invited different partners to our business meetings so that they could share their own personal experiences in their entrepreneurial journeys. The students were very engaged, and we know this because they asked lots of questions. During our business meeting, where we used a strategy called heart mapping, the students thought about what issues were important to them and where they thought they could make a difference in the world. After looking at the social issues that were related to the pandemic, the students were asked to research charities in their community. They spoke with their families, and they were able to name several charities. Through a Google Forms vote, the students chose 2 charities, and they are the Ottawa Mission and Fairy Tales Rescue. Next slide, please. Representation matters. More than ever, this needs to be a focus in our society. We intentionally sought out partners in the Ottawa community who would be good role models for the students. We looked at the qualities of an entrepreneur, and after reflecting on this, it was clear that with the diverse makeup of the virtual classroom, that we focus our efforts on finding partners who the students could identify with and who would model empathy, hard work, and the true spirit of entrepreneurship. We also looked at the environmental impact of our business and ensured that we were selling products that we could get behind. We intentionally found partners who shared our values about ingredients that are fair trade, ethically sourced, and organic. Next slide, please. In this slide, you can appreciate the variety of digital tools necessary to run a virtual classroom and run business meetings. I've always considered myself to be relatively technologically savvy, but in order to be successful, I had to make sure that all the students were also capable of using these tools as well in order to meet many of the different curriculum expectations. Part of the business was learning to master the Shopify store. It was difficult and time-consuming, but the store proved to be the only way to sell our product during the pandemic. The students took pride in the store, and they looked forward to using the data each week in order to make informed decisions. They enjoyed tracking the business, and in the end, it helped to develop their financial literacy skills. Next slide, please. The Ontario Ministry of Education and groups like the OECD have identified and listed a set of global competencies and transferable 21st century skills. These global competencies are known as the 6 Cs. Citizenship, creativity, and collaboration were highlighted in our learning journey. Through growing the business and operating in a virtual world, the students were able to make progress on the deep learning continuum. They lived their values, grew their passion, and shared their learning in an authentic way. It's clear to me that social entrepreneurship is the most impactful way to engage students and give each one of them a moment to shine. And now I'd like to introduce Joey Wilkie, the grade 3 virtual student, who's going to share his experience with you. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Ms. Summers. Hi, my name is Joey Wilkie, and I am here to speak to you about my grade 3 class business, CBTS Smile Bags. I've enjoyed being part of a social enterprise. It has helped me to get through the pandemic, and I have learned about business. For example, I learned how to ask politely for seed money and how to speak with business partners. I also got to see the inside of a Shopify store and was able to think about website design. My class came up with the concept of a gift bag, the name of the business, logo ideas, taglines, and advertisements for our business. Another highlight was when we saw Molly's article about our business in the local newspapers. The program helped me to build my confidence. I enjoyed putting all the pieces together. It was like a puzzle, challenging at times, but in the end, you get to see the whole picture. It has been fun making a business that will help local charities in our community, the Ottawa Mission, and Fairy Tales Cat Rescue. In my mind, I think the business has helped to build our classroom community. Everybody in the class had a different job to do, but we all worked together for the same basic goal. Even though we were a virtual class, our teacher found ways to get us involved. My brother and I helped by stamping the bags with our CBTS logo. Others in our class packed the bags with kindness messages. It was exciting when our business mentor, Miss Betty, came to visit our virtual class during our business meetings. The class talked about how to build our business and what was going to be our next step. And when it was time to do the next step, they would always help us along the way. Also, I did some real-life problem solving. I've learned financial literacy by looking at the Shopify store each week. I like being able to see the numbers. I like adding and subtracting and seeing the profits that we are giving to our charities. I enjoyed putting together the website and the store. I encountered problems along the way. One big problem was that we were a virtual class. It made for some challenges in putting everything together, but in other ways, it helped that we were virtual because we got to have an online store, which has helped us to keep safe in the pandemic. I would recommend this program. It's been fun learning about business, working with our business partners, and our mentor. Also, learning how to raise money for charities, helping others, and plus, We all got to work together as a team. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Joey, for joining me and sharing about our collaborative project. Thank you, Mr. Chair and Superintendent Montgomery, for the invitation and the opportunity to speak about our venture. This is a link to our store if you'd like to check it out and shop. And should you have any questions, we'd be glad to answer them if there's time.
Thank
Thank you.
you, Miss. Oh, sorry. I'm just going to add, thank you, Miss Summers and Joey. I thought the trustees might be interested to hear that in order for Joey to prepare tonight, he actually watched snippets of recordings of the board meeting. So you had a bit of an audience, which is great. But thank you, Miss Summers and Kim LaSalle, our coordinators also here tonight, for your leadership in this and for showing that our deep learning approach and with the Ottawa Catholic School Board is one that can be actually very impressive in a virtual world. If not, it's one of the more impressive examples I've seen myself. So a big thank you, and we're happy to take any questions at this time.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Summers, and thank you very much, Joey, for what you're doing. You're a movie star now. Were you nervous at all talking in front of everybody? Yes? You know, you can go back on YouTube and watch yourself now. You did a great job. So I'm sure that I'm going to have 9 questions here. So we will go with Trustee Whitted, then Trustee Moore, then Trustee Lawrence.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I'll start with Joey. I just wanted to say how much of a great job you did. What a wonderful presentation. And you're definitely, you're a future star on Dragon's Den. I think you're going to do really well in the business world. So I'll be looking out for you. Maybe a question for Ms. Summers. What's sort of like the key takeaway that your students are learning here? What are you finding in terms of the development of their skills is probably like the top advantage of having these online stores and being able to introduce this type of curriculum at that age?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'll answer Trustee Whitted's question. Main takeaway, Mr. Whitted, would be that they're really developing in deep learning, and that they are moving along the continuum of the deep learning scale. They are, we're addressing the global competencies, but we're also addressing the Catholic graduate expectations. And I think through all of the projects in our board, social entrepreneur projects, I think our students are getting that out of participating in the program.
Just a supplemental through you. This one's for Joey. Joey, I'm really interested in looking at your store. I'm going to take a look after the meeting and see if I can buy something and support some of your charities. Okay. So thank you very much for the great work you're doing. Keep it up.
Trustee Moore.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Joey, I watched your minute 53 video on your store. It's awesome. You're already a star. I just had a question about part of the joy of this project is giving the money to the charities. And this year you're not able to have them come into your class and give it. So have you planned a special event for giving the money to the charities?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I will answer Trustee Moore's question. I don't think we have organized anything, but our teacher could always be holding some surprises, so you never know, really.
Thank you. And just a supplemental, how much money have you raised so far?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I will answer Trustee Moore's question. I believe we have made $1,900, around $1,900, and our goal is to make $2,000.
Wow, congratulations for just about reaching your goal. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Very good. Trustee Lawrence.
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you. This is for Joey. Joey, I can guarantee you that everyone at Corpus Christi is really proud of you because I've already heard about this. So congratulations. Trustee Witter really asked my question, but For yourself, is this something that you will continue in next year, do you think? Should I warn Mrs. Stasic that maybe, she should put you in charge of fundraising or something next year?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I will answer Trustee Lawrence's question. I do think I will use the skills again. I am hoping it'll be really soon.
Good. You've done a great job, Joey. Thank you, and thank you from the whole community. I read the article in the Glebe report, obviously, and I'm sure everyone is so proud of you. I know they are at Corpus, that's for sure. So you take care of yourself and have a good rest of the year.
Thank you.
Trustee Coburn?
Great, thank you. Thank you, Mark. So Joey, I work for one of those charities. I work for the Ottawa Mission. So I want to thank you on behalf of the Ottawa Mission for your kind donation. I want to ask you a question though. So you're studying virtually. You put up an online store with Shopify, which is all real cool. How did you put together the smile bags for the clients, if you will, at the Ottawa Mission? How did you guys get together to put them together?
For you, Mr. Chair, I will answer Trustee Coburn's question. What we did was we started off with 3 different jobs, and they were stamping the bags, packing the bags, and I think it might have been putting in the kindness messages. I'm not sure. And there were 3 students in the class that were working to cover those 3 jobs. Me and my brother were stamping the bags. One of my friends was packing the bags, and another of my friends were putting in the kindness messages. And we just, the Summers would drop the bags off and the items that you need, and then when you are finished, there would be a certain due date, and then you would drop it off at Corpus Christi. Miss Summers would pick it up and go to the next family, and so on and so on. And then we had the bags prepared.
Good, thanks for that. So all that to say, you can't do everything virtually, right? You actually have to get together to do some of this stuff, which is, I think, important part of the learning. Thanks again.
Trustee Armstrong, then Trustee Curry.
Joey, great job on the business. Just wondering if you did any research on taxing products, if you learned anything about taxes or.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I will answer Trustee Armstrong's question. I don't really know anything about taxes yet.
Yet.
Just a second, Mr. Chair. Joey, if you had a chance, would you increase or decrease taxes on your products?
For you, Mr. Chair, I will answer Trustee Armstrong's question. I don't really know what the taxes were, so I couldn't really increase or decrease it.
Okay, great answer. Thank you.
Trustee Curry.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Joey. Well, congratulations, Joey. It's great to see you're getting your feet wet in business. It's a great pathway to be following. I was wondering, Joey, was it tough to decide the items to put in the bag? Was there a lot of discussion, or did it become fairly obvious what the item should be?
For you, Mr. Chair, I will answer Trustee Curry's question. I can't really remember what the deal was because it seems like a long time ago now. So my mind has kind of gone blank. Sorry.
That's all right. That happens to me quite a bit. I was just, Mr. Chair, through you to Samara, I was just wondering if is there anything from your experience now going through this, anything that you would suggest might be improved in the program? Anything like, should there have a longer time, or is there anything that that struck you as, oh, if only this were part of the program? Did anything like that occur to you?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'll answer Trustee Curry's question. Given that this program is a pilot project, a new project for the Ottawa Catholic School Board, I think this was a learning year for the program. So we have lots of opportunities to provide feedback, and most recently, Ms. LaSalle put out a questionnaire for all of the staff to give feedback about the program and how we can improve it for the next couple of years. We're really grateful that we now have an OCSB version called the Social Entrepreneur Program. So it's great.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any other questions? Joey, I think you did a great job. One question I've got is, did you have fun doing it?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I will answer the chair's question. I did enjoy doing it. It was really fun. As I said in the script, putting all the pieces together. It was kind of like a puzzle in some ways. It was challenging, but in the end, you get to see the whole picture, and that's the best part.
So you're looking forward to doing it again?
Totally.
Great. So you should consider something the minute you get to high school. It's called a student trustee's position. The decorum you just used on attending a meeting, you did very, very well. Congratulations on your efforts. And we're going to send you a gift card. Usually you get this at the board meeting, but we haven't been having board meetings for the last year. So your principal and your teacher, will receive a gift card for you from us, and we appreciate you coming to explain the whole situation to us. And good luck in getting that last $100 to break your $2,000 goal. Thank you very much, Joey.
Thank you.
So you can watch. Well, you got to ask your parents. But if you want to watch the next 2 hours of the board meeting, you're more than welcome to stay.
No, thank you.
No, okay, I think you should go and do your homework then. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, ladies. Moving on with the agenda, item D, we don't have any delegations. Public session, there's none. Can I have approval of the agenda, please? Trustee Coburn, Trustee Curry. That the agenda for the regular board meeting of March 9, 2021 be approved as presented. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Declarations of conflict of interest, seeing none. Confirmations of minutes of the regular board meeting of February 23rd, 2021. Can I have a mover, please? Trustee Armstrong, Trustee McEwen. That the minutes of the regular board meeting of February 23rd, 2021 be adopted as presented. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. There's no unfinished business from previous meetings. There's no trustee motions. Item K1, presentation and consideration of committee reports. Memo from the Superintendent of Special Education and Student Services re the SEAC minutes of January 20th, 2021. Superintendent.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Can I have a mover, please? Trustee Moore, Trustee Curry. That the memorandum from the Superintendent of Special Education and Student Services dated February 22nd, 2021, entitled SEAC Minutes of January 20th, 2021 be received. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item 2, memo from the Director of Education, Parent Involvement Committee minutes from December 8th, 2020 and January 20th, 2021. Mr. Director?
For receipt, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Can I have a mover, please? Trustee Moore, a seconder. Trustee Simpson. That the memorandum from the Director of Education dated March 4th, 2021, and the report entitled Parent Involvement Committee minutes dated December 8th, 2020 and January 20th, 2021 be received. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item L1, presentation and consideration of staff or trustee reports. Memo from Superintendent of Student Success, Intermediate and Secondary, STEAM Week. Welcome, Superintendent Frenda.
Thanks very much. If Superintendent Edwards could queue up our slides, that would be great. We are really excited to tell you about our first ever STEAM Week that took place in February. As you can see, well, you can't see yet, but you'll see in the title slide, the letters in STEAM represent science, technology, engineering, the arts, and mathematics. Sarah Abrams, our guidance and pathways consultant, and Katie Lewis Pryor, our experiential learning consultant, will give you an overview of the many, many activities that were planned for our staff and students from kindergarten right to grade 12. The week was jam-packed with live coding sessions, career panels, a career fair, fun facts, and so many, many more engaging and interesting activities. I'll turn it over to Katie and Sarah to tell you more about our very successful STEAM Week launch.
Good evening. Sarah Abrams and I are thrilled to speak with you this evening about OCSB STEAM Week. The idea for the week came from the successes of OCSB Career Week's revamp this past November. It led us to ask how we could continue to encourage our students' career exploration throughout the year, particularly as high school students make their course selections at the end of February. We wanted to create a fun and engaging week for K-12 students and educators that would also provide parents and guardians with more information about how they could help their children with their decision-making and exploration of STEAM career activities at home. Next slide, please. To achieve these goals, we knew that we needed to provide supports for our educators and parents to make it as attractive as possible to join in. And very early on, we decided that each of the 5 days of the week would follow a specific theme, following the subjects of STEAM, as you can see on the slide. Next slide, please. Our K-12 consultants worked diligently to create our resource documents with activities and ideas. We knew that we wanted to be respectful of February being Black History Month, so documents and resources included activities that would meaningfully link to the month, as Black history doesn't sit apart from STEAM. The two build upon and reinforce the combined importance of each other. The contributions of Black scientists, engineers, technologists, artists, and mathematicians play an important part in our past and towards the advancement for the future. Because of this, we curated a list of activities that related to Black History Month, such as people and events to learn about and read aloud stories with Black scientists and engineers as main characters. We also created many system events, which I'll discuss next. Next slide, please. We decided to leverage the structures that we had initiated this past fall for Career Week, such as daily prayers and fun facts. The daily doodle structure morphed under the direction of our consultant, Laura Mazzarello, to #OCSB Creates to encourage students to explore in a more makerspace model of using found objects to create 2 and 3D models based on the topic. To make the week as interactive as possible, We also organized 2 career virtual panels with professionals from STEAM careers with the help of community partner, the Ottawa Network for Education, or ONFE. And for the first time, one of the panels was for junior students, which included an animal chiropractor, a PGA golf professional, and a 12-year-old student who designed face shield ear protectors that he donated to frontline workers. Senior students got to learn from a professional from RBC, an interior designer, an epidemiologist, and a consultant from Foci Solutions. We also organized a career panel with Real Canada for students to explore careers in Canadian film and animation. Students learned about a wide range of film careers and heard from a Toronto hair and makeup artist about her career on film sets. All 3 of these sessions, as you can see on the slide, were highly attended, as were the K-12 live coding sessions that consultants Mary Lou Deal and Carol Aubry and coordinators Robert Kopp and Jennifer Flynn moderated on paper coding, Scratch, and microbits coding. We also had a very successful parent night on Wednesday with JobTalk.ca's John Gallagher teaching about 5 reasons to consider a career in the skilled trades. And this talk busted a lot of myths about these careers, which hopefully will inspire many to think about the trades as a career path. We also spent a lot of time preparing for our first virtual system career fair to help our students with career planning and course selection, which Sarah Abrams will review with you next. Next slide, please.
One of the major board-wide events planned for STEAM Week was an education and career fair in collaboration with Education Career Fairs Ontario, an organization that plans these events for students. This year's event was completely virtual and included a wide variety of colleges, universities, gap year programs, industry participants, and apprenticeship information. Students were able to log into the virtual career fair platform and visit the booths of interest to them and chat with the exhibitors if they had questions. There were also a variety of seminars students could attend, as well as a keynote speech and Q&A sessions by Sam Dema, a youth empowerment motivational speaker. This event not only took place during STEAM Week, but also coincided with high school course selection and provided the timely opportunity for students to explore their interests and post-secondary options. Our target audience for the Education and Career Fair was grade 10 and 11 students, but the fair was open to all students in grades 10 to 12, as well as staff and parents. As well, My Blueprint provided lessons related to the career fair so teachers could incorporate the learning into their classes. In total, over 1,200 students participated in this STEAM Week event. Next slide, please. Some other activities that we promoted to encourage engagement were a Twitter challenge for OCSB educators to showcase the STEAM activities they were doing in their classes. There was phenomenal uptake on this, especially among our elementary teachers, and we were thrilled to see all of the deep learning that was occurring in schools and classrooms across the system. A small sample of the tweets are included at the end of the presentation. In collaboration with both the high school and elementary arts consultants, we also had an OCSB Creates Daily Art Challenge for students in grades K through 12. The daily challenges included creating a 2 or 3D model of something from outer space, creating a 2 or 3D model of a robot, and exploring tessellations. Propeller car kits were also provided to all OCSB grade 4 students at in-person schools, and students had a great time building the cars and measuring how far they could go in the hallway or the classroom. We also provided STEAM Week educational booklets that highlighted the history and STEAM contributions of people of African descent in Canada. All grade 5 in-person students received a hard copy of this activity booklet, and a digital copy was provided to all Virtual Academy grade 5 students. Next slide, please. To promote STEAM Week, we worked closely with the communications department to develop an amazing branding and marketing strategy, which included daily blogs and the weekly Friday Feeling published on the OCSB website, social media promotion, and the creation of the OCSB STEAM hashtag, which was trending across Canada at times during the week. Katie and I worked with our wonderful OA Michelle Sherwin to create an internal website to allow for a one-stop shop for educators and administrators to access all of the resources for STEAM Week. By the end of the week, the website had over 1,600 users and 23,000 page views, and we received excellent feedback about how user-friendly it was. We had several requests to keep the website active, so we created a new permanent website to allow educators to access STEAM resources all year. We also provided prizes for student and educator participation, which included chapters gift cards for the students and resources that educators could use for their own professional learning or to engage with their class. Next slide, please. The organization and planning of OCSB STEAM Week was supported by many departments at the CEC, including elementary and intermediate secondary student success, leading and learning, learning technologies, student services, and the directorate. We are also grateful to the school admin teams for promoting the week and the events with their staff, and to the educators for their enthusiasm and participation in all of the events and for bringing a STEAM focus to the activities for the week. Next slide, please. These last two slides show a very small sampling of the tweets that show the engagement of schools across the board, as well as some of the educator feedback we received through our feedback form. Next slide, please. And as you can see, some of the wonderful feedback were that there were multiple entry points so that all students could feel that they could contribute, that the students enjoyed the hands-on activities, and that it provided some fun in a year that has been a little bit challenging for both educators and students. Thank you so much for your time.
So I think you can see throughout Katie's presentation the incredible amount of time that they devoted to creating a week of amazing activities for staff and students. One of the emails that we received from an elementary principal sums it up. She said, "We wanted to thank you so much for the outstanding work that you put into creating resources for our first ever OCSB STEAM Week. You truly covered everything to make the week successful. Because everything was so well laid out, staff were able to jump in and have fun with the students. Every educator in our school had huge smiles all week and made a point of telling me how helpful each slide deck was for planning purposes. We had an amazing time designing, building, revising. We really appreciated the week, and we can't wait for next year." At this time, we'd be very happy to take any questions.
Questions or comments? Trustee Curry.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Sarah, I guess. This was the first year, and it was virtual. Do you see that virtual is better than in-person would be, or would you like to try in person, or is the virtual the way to go?
Oh, you're muted, Sarah.
Sorry about that. Through you, Mr. Chair. To answer Trustee Curry's question, and I will also allow my colleague Katie to jump in if she wants to as well on this. I think there are benefits and drawbacks to virtual learning. And I think we've all seen this throughout the school year, but Katie and I worked very, very hard to make sure that all of our activities were accessible to all of our in-school students and our virtual students. And we saw excellent engagement from both. We saw our virtual students building Rube Goldberg machines, which are chain reaction, like dominoes falling machines in their living rooms with their toys. And we saw students in classrooms building those things with items they had in the class. So, you know, I truly think there are definitely challenges to virtual learning, but I think we've been able to pivot and make that learning accessible for all of our students.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to respond to Trustee Curry's question as well. I completely agree. I think there are things that you keep. There are elements that are just can reach so many people. When you have 1,600 students on a call, that's so much easier to get to. Just that reach is incredible, that more people can enjoy these community partnerships. So there are things that you definitely keep and things that are just more special in person.
Okay, Mr. Chair, supplemental?
Go ahead, John.
Oh, thank you. Just through you to Katie, and I know you're a great fan of the arts. Do you see any sort of disassociation between the four topics and arts? Like, should arts be in with those other four or not? What's your view on whether arts should be there or not?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to respond to Trustee Curry's question, the arts completely belongs. You think about some of the design work that's responsible for manufacturing products, in terms of IT things, you have to have designers who are making those websites user-friendly. There are graphic designers who are working on things. We had a hair and makeup artist, as I mentioned, from Toronto, who talked about her role in making the film industry more believable. So arts is a natural fit in my book.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you very much, Sarah and Katie, for your presentation. Very, very enlightening. Can I have a mover for the motion, please? Trustee Lawrence and Trustee McEwen. That the memorandum from the Superintendent of Student Services, Intermediate Secondary, dated March 3rd, 2021, entitled STEAM Week, be received. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, ladies. Item L2, memo from the Superintendent of Student Success, Intermediate Secondary, Safe Schools updates. Welcome, Superintendent Frendo.
Thank you. Thanks again. It's a real pleasure to introduce Jennifer Oak, who I think most of you know is our principal of Safe, Inclusive, and Accepting Schools. As the Safe Schools principal, Jennifer oversees many board-wide activities, and tonight she will provide an update of some of the things happening in our schools this year. So if Superintendent Edwards could cue up her slides, that'd be great.
Welcome, Jennifer.
And you can go right to the next slide. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and certainly good evening to everyone. And I'm pleased to have the opportunity tonight to share with you some Safe School updates. Despite working through a pandemic, we have situations where students sometimes need to be temporarily removed from their school, and a suspension or an expulsion is warranted. And when things like this happen, I'm so pleased that we have the Ottawa Catholic Intervention Program to support our students on a long-term suspension. This program is for students who are suspended for 6 days or more. And during that time, if they choose to attend our program, they are able to work on their academics and also receive clinical support. We're extremely blessed to have a full-time social worker and a full-time psychologist in this program because they are able to tailor the needs, in particular the clinical needs of the student. Some of our students might be working on areas of anger management or substance abuse, but many of the students who come to us are really trying to figure out if they're in a similar situation, what can they do differently so that they don't end up returning to us? A couple of years ago, we put together a parent handbook or a parent flyer, and that was really to help parents understand that this is not where troubled kids go. This is a place where kids go to learn and to grow from the mistakes that maybe they have made during their schooling. Next slide, please. So you're probably aware, in July of 2020, new regulations were put in place that change how student behavior is addressed in kindergarten to grade 3. And essentially, principals no longer have the discretion to impose suspensions. So for example, let's say you had a student who swore at a teacher, who was involved in vandalism, who threatened someone. Principals wouldn't be suspending for that. What we've been working with our principals is really to look at the range of options that they have when addressing inappropriate behaviors. Things like teaching kids to talk through it, to look at a restorative approach, to teach behavioral expectations. I think we all recognize kids who are in JK to 3 are still really learning classroom coping skills. And what we do not want to see a trajectory of kids continually being suspended. We're participating right now in conjunction with the Special Education Department, a pilot project where we're working with 4 elementary schools. And within those 4 elementary schools, they have each been assigned a mental health worker for half a day. And that mental health worker's job is twofold. They're able to work with staff to help staff understand the impact that trauma can have on how students learn and how they behave. And the mental health workers are also able to support students who maybe do not have the appropriate coping skills when dealing with frustrations. Our mental health workers have also been able to support parents who are looking for strategies to support some challenging behaviors at home. Next slide, please. I'm hoping when you return to the CEC, you'll get a chance to see our new emergency poster. All of these posters have been displayed in all of our schools. And this is really just a refresher of the flip chart that we used to have. The nice thing about this particular poster is that it really helps staff and students know what they need to do in an emergency situation. You're probably also aware that all schools have to have evacuation sites. And what we decided to do in the last year is to create a central database for our communications department, because you can appreciate that when there's a crisis, effective communication is essential. And now our communications department has all the information about our schools, where they evacuate, if they need transportation. So that's something that's really been important for us to develop over the last little while. We continue to ensure that all of our administrators receive training in violent threat risk assessment. And I think next week we have about 38 administrators who are taking part in that 2-day training. Next slide, please. We are required by the Ministry of Education to practice lockdowns twice during the school year. But needless to say, given COVID, we've had to revise our lockdown drills. I've had the opportunity over the last couple of months to work with the 3 other school boards and our police partners to prepare 3 different presentations about lockdowns. So we have one presentation for JK to 3, one for 4 to 8, and one for 9 to 12. These PowerPoint presentations will be shared with all teachers in our board, and they will present them to the students, because what's really important is that our students and our staff do not forget what their responsibility is if we have to enter into a live lockdown. Next slide, please. So our School Resource Officer Program is a long-standing partnership that exists between all of the school boards within Ottawa and with our Ottawa Police Service. Each school is assigned a specific school resource officer who would be that principal's primary contact. Each school police officer can be supporting anywhere from 20 to 24 schools. And what they do is they provide guidance and support to our students, to our parents, and to our staff. And ultimately, our school resource officers serve as a resource for safety and security concerns within the school and also with around our school environment. Next slide, please. As you know, there have been questions about the SRO program in our schools, and we decided it would be important to gather feedback from our key stakeholders, from our parents, from our staff, and from our students. And you can see from this slide that we've been engaging in a number of different activities to gather that feedback. We have right now our SROs who have been presenting to our Black Student Association and to our school councils and our student councils. The school police officers are sharing with the students and with our parents their qualifications, what they do in their job, and how they go about building partnerships within the schools. A number of our schools are also conducting focus groups with our BSAs and with our school councils. And the purpose of these focus groups is to gather input and suggestions about the program to make sure that we are better reflecting everyone's needs. Next slide, please. We've been engaging in a number of student activities that have been taking place to continue to educate and support our students. And I think you're all familiar with our longstanding OCSB Connect app. You know, that's an anonymous app that supports students in grades 7 to 12, where they're able to share any concerns that they might have in their school, whether it's bullying or incidents of crime. And we continue to ensure that our students are aware of that app and that they utilize it. Over the last year and a half, Health Canada has been providing in-school and virtual presentations about the consequences of vaping. Over the next couple of weeks, we have about 26 elementary schools taking part in a presentation by Dr. Olson on the effects of bullying. And you all know every year we celebrate and we focus on Bullying Prevention Awareness Week. And I know a couple of weeks ago, you had an excellent presentation from Holy Trinity on what they did around Kindness Week. Next slide, please. I think we all understand the importance of continuing professional development in the area of safe schools. We've continued to provide a number of supports for our administrators. We recently had a presentation for all of our principals about working effectively with parents. We had a presentation for all of our vice principals about progressive discipline and really what does progressive discipline mean? We have ongoing practices in restorative training. You know that we've trained over 600 people and we continue to do that. We have a couple of interesting presentations coming up for our vice principals on sextortion, and we just had one last week with 37 of our high school vice principals learning about current behavioral trends and digital updates. So really trying to understand the world that many of our youth live in, such as using TikTok and Snapchat. It seems as soon as we manage to learn the technology, something new comes ahead. So ongoing professional development is really important for us as administrators. Next slide, please. You can see from this slide that we have many partnerships throughout Ottawa. The Safe Schools Department has been extremely blessed to work with a number of organizations in Ottawa and really to sit and run a number of committees. And I think you know that we are constantly involved in trying to keep our schools safe and always focusing on our board priorities of being community, being innovative, and be well. I'd certainly like to thank you for your time this evening, and I know Superintendent Frendo and I are available to take any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Jennifer. Questions or comments? Trustee Armstrong. Trustee Curry, second.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Just wondering, has student behavior been a challenge in the virtual schools over the past year?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Great question, Trustee Armstrong. Because virtual is new, we've had to put many procedures in place to support some inappropriate behaviors that some of our students have engaged in online. There have been opportunities where we've had to suspend students for some of their behaviors, and we've modified our suspension forms. But more importantly, we've been working with our vice principals to support that online behavior. As you can appreciate, virtual learning is new for all students. And you know, and I've talked about this in the past, that it's not always about consequences, but it's about teaching and learning and helping students to behave appropriately, not only online, but with their classmates and with their teachers.
Just to check a second, Mr. Chair. It's okay. So just wondering with the leaving the cameras off, I've noticed that on your website, I believe, you're recommending that kids could, if they could, check in once during a period. Do you think that that would help with behavior?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's a great question. And it's a tough question to answer because there's two schools of thought on cameras being on and off. You know that I work in a challenging program, and many students have shared with me personally that they would be extremely uncomfortable with having their camera on for many, many reasons. But then you have educators who are missing that human contact and who are missing that human element and would love to see the camera on. So some of the things that we've advised our teachers to do is to have smaller group chats with the students, so small breakout rooms. And sometimes in those situations, our students are much more comfortable putting their camera on and feel a bit more of a connection with that classroom teacher.
Thank you.
Trustee Curry, then Trustee Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Jennifer. You mentioned about the pilot project in 4 schools for grades, I think 1 to 3, with a mental health worker provided half a day a week at each one. Have you found that that is sufficient engagement by the mental health worker to make that an effective program? Or, as you know, we're coming up to budget time. So is it working with half a day a week in each school?
Through you, Mr. Chair. The answer, Trustee Curry, and certainly I would hope by the end of June to be able to provide some feedback to Superintendent Frendo. We have been receiving lots of feedback about the addition of mental health workers in our schools. As you can appreciate, we really want to work with our younger students to really help support them and to change the trajectory that they might be heading down. We are gathering data, and our research officer is assigned to this project. And we've been continuing to hear positive feedback from the 4 schools that have been involved. We've been getting feedback from parents, from students, and from staff. And it's been really nice to see. I think you can appreciate that what we're hoping to see is less outbursts from some of our younger kids. We're hoping to see some of our younger students utilize the CEL strategies that we've been teaching through the number of years. And the ultimate goal is to really to see a safer, welcoming school climate because of the support that our mental health workers have been able to provide with that one-to-one support they've been offering.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Simpson.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Well, Trustee Curry stole a bit of my thunder with the upstream intervention with the mental health workers. But so I just again would like to compliment you on this amazing program, and I'll be very interested to learn of the results of your data collection. My question surrounds the SRO officers. As a former executive director of Vivo Center, where we built very, very strong relationships with our school resource officers as a way of building trust with our students in the event that they need school resource officers to report some challenging issues. I'm very hopeful to hear about feedback that comes as a result of the feedback that you're listing from all of the student groups. Is there going to be some kind of a report or some kind of information that may come back to us about the feedback that you're hearing and how the school resource officers hope to incorporate some of the feedback into their best practices?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, Trustee Simpson, we haven't collected all of the data yet. We are still gathering that data. And certainly once all that data is completed, I'll be sharing that data with Superintendent Frendo. We've received some feedback, obviously, already from staff and students, and I work on a daily basis with our school police officers. I also work with a staff sergeant where we're providing some of that feedback that we're learning, because we know no matter what program we offer, no matter what we do, it's always about how can we do things better. And we've heard great feedback from everyone, because really what do we want? We want all of our students to feel safe, we want them to feel welcome, and we want them to feel they're part of our school community.
Trustee Moore, then Trustee Coburn.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Hello, Jennifer, and congratulations on your retirement. You're the whole reason I got into this. I had a question about the the Ottawa Catholic Intervention Program. And if students choose not, if they're over 6 days or 20 days and they choose not to go, do we have to provide any alternate education programming for them?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Trustee Moore. I appreciate that. Not retired yet. Every student who is suspended, we are required to ensure that their academic programming continues. So no matter what, if a student chooses not to attend our intervention program, the academics are provided by the home school. You know this better than anyone. The value of attending the program is the clinical piece that we can offer the students. We've had a few students choose not to attend, but very few. On average, our experience has been that students join the program because really it's a great place to be, and when they're there, they really enjoy their time. And I've shared with you in the past that many would like to stay.
Yes, that's true. Thank you so much.
Trustee Coburn.
Yeah, my question was asked by Trustee Simpson. It's in regard to the feedback with the SRO program. So asked and answered. Thanks, Jennifer.
Is there any other questions or comments? Thank you very much, Jennifer, for your presentation. Can I have a mover, please, for the motion? Trustee Simpson, Trustee Coburn. That the memorandum from the Superintendent of Student Success, Intermediate Secondary, dated March 2nd, 2021, entitled Safe Schools Update, be received. Opposed? Carried. Item L3, memo from the Superintendent of Planning and Facilities, Hydro Ottawa request for easement at St. Joseph High School. Superintendent Bell, welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. We have before you a memo requesting the approval of a Hydro Ottawa easement at St. Joseph's High School. Our manager, Ian Baxter, will provide details of the easement request. Ian?
Thank you, Superintendent Valla, and good evening, everyone.
Welcome, Mr. Baxter.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, trustees have in front of them a memo regarding the approval of an easement on the St. Joseph High School site. As a public body, from time to time, the board is presented with requests from utilities and agencies for the consideration of easements on our properties. This easement has been requested by Hydro Ottawa as part of an upgrade to services in this part of the city. As we know, development continues to move rapidly in South Nepean, and this easement will facilitate the servicing of a new plan of subdivision located to the south of the school. The proposal consists of a 2 meter by 2 meter easement for the installation of a support anchor for a pole to be located at the southern extremity of the school site. Locating the infrastructure in this part of the property will not affect the school or the site functionally or operationally. Hydro Ottawa will monetarily compensate the board for the easement. That compensation will be based on the size of the easement and a valuation equal to 50% of fair market value. All fees associated with the transaction would be paid by Hydro Ottawa. Hydro Ottawa has indicated that its estimated schedule for the easement is late spring 2021, although we know from experience that those timelines can be somewhat fluid. No power upgrade to the site is required as a result of the work that is taking place. And staff are here to answer any questions trustees may have regarding the request and the memo.
Thank you. Is there any questions or comments? Trustee Curry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just two brief ones. So the pole isn't on the school property, it's just the guide wire. And the second would be, is the compensation is a one-time payment, it's good forever then, or is there a time limit on the easement? Thanks.
Through you, Mr. Chair, and in response to both of Trustee Curry's questions, the pole would be located on board property, and that is why the easement is required. And it would be a one-time payment for the easement, for a permanent easement on that part of the school property.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, can I have a mover? Sorry, Mr. Baxter? Did you have something to add?
I did not. No, sorry.
Okay. Trustee Armstrong, do you have a question? Mover?
Yes, move in. Yeah.
Okay. And a seconder, please. Trustee Simpson. Moved by Trustee Armstrong, seconded by Trustee Simpson, that the memorandum from the Superintendent of Planning and Facilities dated March 3rd, 2021, entitled Hydro Ottawa Request for Easement at St. Joseph High School be received, and the board approves the easement in favor of Hydro Ottawa. All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Item L4, memo from the Superintendent of Leading and Learning, Black History Month Highlights of School Initiatives 2021. Welcome, Superintendent Keeley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. During Black History Month, we celebrate the many achievements and contributions for both Black Canadians and the African experience around the world. Students and staff across our board are provided the opportunity to consciously focus on and celebrate the resilience, innovation, determination, and excellence of Black Canadians as we work towards a more diverse and inclusive community where everyone has a chance to flourish. I would ask if Mr. Superintendent Edwards could present the slide deck, please. Thank you. You can go to the next slide. So centrally, the OCSB staff has curated many resources, including prayers, liturgies, anti-racism resources, multimedia resources, articles, own voices literature, virtual field trips, to name a few, that for our staff to use and incorporate as they will throughout the month and can be used again throughout the year. Next slide, please. In honor of Black History Month, students at the Ottawa Catholic School Board were treated to a unique opportunity with a pre-recorded virtual art lessons from artist, author, and designer Fatuma Koo. Through the OCSB Arts Education Consultants, Fatuma Koo provided our educators with a series of virtual art lessons for students in kindergarten to grade 12, geared to their respective grade levels. Each guided project invites students on a journey inspired by Fatuma's African heritage and home in Canada. And we had quite a few classes partake in this at all levels, and not elementary, they were general classes. Even in high school, non-traditional art classes had the opportunity to experience this as well. It was very well received. Next slide, please. Our virtual academies, both at the 7 to 12 and the K to 6 levels, also celebrate the achievements of Black Canadians through prayers, discussions, virtual field trips, and student-led projects. Here are some examples of the 7 to 12 initiatives that were done. And if you can go to the next slide, the elementary are there. Many of these initiatives were shared across the virtual platform for other classes, as well as at their home schools. And it's another way that we are continuing to build community throughout the virtual world. Many of these initiatives follow along the deep learning initiatives that we have throughout the board and provides authentic learning experiences for our students. Next slide, please. Some more specific examples are here at Notre Dame. Is a great example of a student-led initiative, which was supported also by school leaders to add this t-shirt to the uniform. So our Notre Dame student, Daisy Tang, designed the t-shirts that were being sold to raise money for the Agnes Zambali Boys and Girls Club in Uganda. These t-shirts were sold out in 3 days, and so they had to make a secondary request. They put in another order, and they are going to be able to be used as part of the school uniform. And again, all the proceeds are going to charity. Next slide, please. St. Bernard School chose the school's gospel wall to showcase their focus for Black History Month. They created a slide decks in which each day they celebrated and reflected upon the many influential Black Canadians and their achievements throughout Canadian history. Their theme was Black History is Canadian History. Next slide, please. A great example of the active Black student associations was shown at St. Paul's. Black student associations have been vital in ensuring student voice and representation are at the center of all of the school work plans for Black History Month. St. Paul's this month, a few of the highlights including having guest speaker Mindfulness Megan, a mental health coach, having specific resources each day by an influential Black Canadian person, as well as the St. Paul's students created and shared a video about appropriate language and anti-racism. They were planning that for a few months. They drafted the script, edited it, and also had it recorded and shared out to the school and the school community. It was very well done. Next slide, please. And of course, we couldn't forget our community. And a great example is St. Pius. We're making connections with Black community leaders with a series of Black History Month events, including live events. Cloud Ledbetter, who's been teaching and publishing on subjects in African world studies for over a decade. He's researching Black youth as a postdoctoral fellow at the University of Ottawa, spoke to the students. A student, Peyton Ferdinand, also was able to interview Kwesi Loney, head of soccer program at Carleton University, in a live chat for the school community. There were also other guests that were invited from a variety of areas across the city. Next slide, please. And Mr. Edwards, if you could, yes, this is a Twitter moment. If you could click on that, that would be appreciated. So this is a Twitter moment highlighting just some of the elementary schools from across the system and some of the Black History Month initiatives they tweeted out. The schools include St. Thomas More, St. Rita, St. Gemma, Prince of Peace, Our Lady of Victory, St. Anne, Corpus Christi, St. Andrew, Good Shepherd, Convent Glen, Guardian Angels, Assumption, Our Lady of Wisdom, St. George, just to name a few. Again, this has only been a snapshot. I think, there might be some trouble with that Twitter link. I apologize for that. Again, so this is only a brief snapshot of the many Black History Month activities. And I want to remind everyone that February is a time to celebrate Black excellence and Black joy. And of course, we all will be continuing to learn, to share, and to celebrate Black history throughout the school in all of our classrooms every month. And that's the end of my presentation, and I would be happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Keeley. Questions and comments? Trustee Curry, then Trustee Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Superintendent Keeley. I was wondering, is it a conscious effort to highlight the positive, like the achievements of the Black Canadians, rather than get into some of the problems that have arisen for them because of racism and systemic discrimination? Is the Black History Month sort of focused intentionally more on achievements of the Black Canadians than say some of the things that have been done to them that have made them suffer?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Curry. That's a great question. Really, those conversations are important to have any day of the year. And those conversations are entered into in every day of the year that are needed. We do, Black History Month is celebrated to be recognized, to make sure that there's a conscious effort, not only celebrating Black excellence and Black joy and Black history, Canadian Black history, but it does have those conversations as well. Those conversations need to be done throughout the year in our classrooms and in our hallways and in the staff rooms. And we do need to support our Black students and our Black communities. However, Black History Month is a special focus where we continue to have those conversations, but we do want to have a time to celebrate and make sure that we highlight the excellence that is within the Black community.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Moore?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Superintendent Keeley, I went back to the T-shirt because I don't come from a background of school uniforms. So how rare is it to have a school uniform modified, and what process did they have to go through to make that happen?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Trustee Moore. So that the school uniform and the dress codes at the school does go through the principal and the school leaders. So there would have to be some consultation with school students and the parent groups. However, it is a student-led initiative, and we would want to support that. I think it was a great move to do that and to recognize it, especially for that school community. So there is a process. Yes, it does have to be supported, and I think in this case, it was a great initiative for them to do.
Oh, innovative. I hope we keep her in mind for the Catholic Graduate Award. Thank you.
Trustee Armstrong.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I don't know if you saw this, Deborah, on Twitter, something that I thought was really cool. Just to comment on a tweet that had a periodic table that showcased Black leaders featured as the elements. I thought that was really cool. And so I just wondered who we would have to thank for that. Would that be communications or?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Trustee Armstrong, yes, that was a great resource, and it actually came out of Immaculata High School, and that resource with a teacher and a student that was adapted from another model, but it was shared out through Immaculata, and of course it was shared across the system, and I believe it was
It was shown a little bit earlier. It didn't come into our slide deck. We started highlighting a few other things, but it was very well received. And you're right, it did have recognized each element was an important Black historian figure.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you.
Is there any other questions or comments? Director D'Amico.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just to follow up on Ms. Keeley's response to Trustee Armstrong's question, I also want to give credit to Parents for Diversity. I believe they were the originators and worked with some staff at Immaculata. So it was not just a board initiative, it was worked through Parents for Diversity. So give them a shout out as well in response to that question. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other questions or comments? Thank you, Superintendent Keeley, for your presentation. Can I have a mover, please? Trustee McEwen and Trustee Simpson. That the memorandum from the Superintendent of Leading and Learning dated March 3rd, 2021, entitled Black History Month Highlights of School Initiatives 2021 be received. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Item 5, memo for the Superintendent of Finance Administration, OSTA update for February 2021. Welcome, Superintendent Shimmons.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before you have an update for the February ongoings of the OSTA operations. So just a few of those highlights. You'll see that the new office lease has been signed. So now they're proceeding on the next steps to planning when that move might be scheduled and incorporating that within the planning schedule that goes on for next year's startup. Mentioning startup, you'll see item number 3 is the new startup or the restart. So after the shutdown in January, of course, all of it's like returning to the first day of school for transportation as well. So that was a return after the lockdown. And related to that lockdown, OSTA is also working on the calculations related to the finances during that period of time, because during that period of time, there are some savings because a portion of the savings, because buses were not running. However, we have received a memo from the ministry saying that they will be clawing back the fuel for that portion of time those buses weren't running. So the calculation is very different from what we've normally seen. We normally got a fixed amount. This time they're calculating it based on day by day, the number of days that weren't operating. So they're working on calculating that variance. And also in the financial area is they're working on building the budget for the upcoming school year based on the assumptions that the boards have now put in place around the virtual schooling. And that they will be bringing, we expect them to bring a preliminary budget in March, but we did have an update which indicated that for the first 4-month analysis, a 33% drop in ridership due to the number of students that are either on virtual or finding alternate ways of transportation coming to school. So on that note, I would be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Questions or comments? Trustee McEwen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, to Lisa, or to, I don't really have a question. It's more that I'm recognizing being back on OSTA on a hard work that Vicki and the OSTA team, the operators and the drivers are experiencing this year, cleaning buses. We're seeing, route cancellations and delays, and still getting our kids safely to school. I think the maps at the beginning of the year that, are showing parents how they can maybe walk into a school, park a few blocks away. I'm certainly seeing that around some of my schools. And I just want to publicly say that, recognize how hard they're working and how safe they are getting our kids to school.
Thank you. Is there any other questions or comments? Would you like to move the motion, Trustee McEwen?
Yes,
I've
please.
got something, Mark. I've got something, Mark.
Trustee Armstrong?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. Is there anything that we can do to mitigate the difficulties that OSTA had in their executing their plans this past year? Is there anything we can learn from that and bring forward to mitigate those kinds of problems this coming year?
So thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Trustee Armstrong, are you referring to this startup in September?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I will be the first one to admit that I did challenge OSTA about the potential for starting earlier in September, but clearly due to safety requirements, it was absolutely necessary to ensure that proper planning took place, and for that reason, the delayed startup. That wasn't entirely OSTA because they only work on the information that they have from the two boards. And as you recall, the virtual academy was announced very, very late in August. And it took time for the two boards to enroll students, whether they were in bricks and mortar or they were going to virtual academy. And then that information has to be passed along to OSTA. So by rushing, I think what we've learned is rushing that process is not wise to do when you're transporting the number of students that we're transporting. So I think they did the right thing by pausing and ensuring that all of their planning was done thoroughly to ensure for safety of students.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions or comments? Trustee Simpson?
Just before our meeting, I was listening to CBC, and the director from the district board was having an interview indicating that they are going back using a hybrid model and that they may be switching gears depending on the most updated information, which I appreciate the position. But if they change from hybrid to bricks and mortar sort of midstream or in August, is that going to, and you may not be able to answer this, is that going to impact our transportation as we've already made a different commitment than they have? It's probably not a question that can easily be answered.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would support that that would be a very technical question that we would have to go back to Vicky specifically. Will it impact our transportation? I think it's all depending on timing. So if the timing, Vicky, I believe, or Asta, if I'm recalling back to the summer, I believe they need roughly 6 weeks to 2 months to thoroughly plan that transportation. So depending on when that timing rolls out and when the ministry might announce something, will impact on how the two boards react, and then that flows through to the transportation.
Director D'Amico?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I was just going to pretty much echo what Superintendent Shimmons responded. At this point, neither board knows what model we'll be using, so we're both projecting and we are awaiting ministry decisions. So we don't know if it'll be an adapted model. Both boards really have to prepare for multiple models, which is what we're doing. We've communicated our end goal, which is to have a regular quadmester 2 semesters. We don't know if that's how we will start. We'll have to certainly monitor the pandemic, wait for the guidance from the ministry, but we will continue to be prepared, and OSTA will provide the service for both boards as needed. So we'll work with OSTA once we have more details from the ministry.
Thank you. Any last questions or comments? Can I have a seconder for the motion, please? Trustee Lawrence? Moved by Trustee McEwen, second by Trustee Lawrence, that the memorandum from the Superintendent of Finance Administration dated March 3rd, 2021, entitled OSTA Update for February 2021 be received. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item L6, Memo from the Superintendent of Finance Administration, re 2021-2022 budget process and guidelines. Welcome back, Superintendent Chimmins.
So tonight we begin publicly the process for developing the budget for the upcoming year. I can tell you behind the scenes, we're always thinking ahead, even in the fall, to the next year's budget. And if you can see in your memo, the middle section on page 13, which is the first page of the memo, it talks about funding. So the ministry is thinking about the next year's funding very early on as well. They asked for our enrollment projections in November. They asked for the revised budget for the current year in December. They put that all together, and when the provincial budget is passed and they are provided with allocations, the ministry will give us our funding. And again, I would remind that it has been announced the ministry expects that to be April, which is the normal schedule that we would be used to seeing it. So we're hopeful that that information does come through for April. And that would plan for our normal timelines of passing a budget in June, because the budget is due the end of June. So on the second page of the memo, which is page 14, you'll see a summary of the budget guidelines that is being used in order for building the budget. There's no change really to the majority of these guidelines. There's a couple items I'd like to highlight, or 4 items I'd like to highlight. 3 of them are out of the ministry memo that provided us additional guidance on planning for the upcoming school year. The first one is in the middle of the list of bullets, where it's entitled class size requirements. So there's no change in the current year for the class size requirements. If you think back to last year at this time, we were thinking about the secondary class sizes and waiting for the ministry to tell us what they might be. So after COVID, we were told they would be 23, and at this time, all class sizes remain the same, and we're to plan that way. The second item from the ministry memo, that I'd like to highlight is around the enrollment projections. So our budget will incorporate projected enrollment increases of 2% overall for the K-12 enrollment. And you'll recall that enrollment is a major driver in our GSN funding. So it provides approximately 95% of our board revenues. In the memo for the guidance, they asked to provide for our actual enrollments for next year, which is what we're doing. We've checked off that box, and to not count on the fact that they would provide stability funding for next year. So while our enrollments are down historically, we'd seen enrollments in the 2 to 3% range. Last year at this time, we were planning on 3.3% before COVID hit, and now we're down to 2%. That's what will be incorporated in the upcoming budget year. The third item that they highlighted in the memo when they provided guidance is the last bullet on that page, one-time funding supports for COVID-19 received in the current year, which approximates $16 million for our board, will not continue for 21-22. So we have to begin our planning for the budget as if we're not receiving that additional funding, which equates to over 116 full-time equivalent positions for our board. But they did indicate that they will continue to monitor the pandemic as well as the virtual delivery model, obviously, as we proceed through to the budget timeline in June. Those 3 items are from the memo, but one other item that will also be incorporated into our budget development is the last item on that page, user fees from example, EDP programs, international students, and community use will continue to be impacted by the pandemic when we're planning for the budget for next year, because they are lower than normal trends. So that's a smaller portion of our revenue, but some of those items can be very significant on our bottom line. Turning the page to page 15 of your agenda package, the top bullet talks about the pandemic impact. And as I mentioned with COVID, we continue to monitor the impacts of the pandemic on our costs and on our revenues, and we'll continue to do so up until the time that the budget is passed, because those swings can be fairly significant depending on changes from the ministry or changes on the information that we're receiving coming in on enrollment projections. Then finally, the last couple of pages on your memo talks about the format and the content of the 21-22 budget. The format will not change. We did have some changes last year, but we're going to keep them the same going forward. So the items that will be presented in various sections A to J are highlighted on page 15, no changes. And then the schedule when those will be rolled out for the board consideration is found on page 16. So we will gradually present the individual sections as they become available, starting the board meeting of April 27th, May 11th, May 25th, with a target date at this time of budget being passed June 8th. Now, all of those timelines are subject to receiving the ministry grants, as well as the grant calculation program from the ministry by early mid-April. We think that we can still make those timelines. If that's adjusted in any way, we obviously will have to push that back later in June, but we always begin our planning to start for the best case scenario based on the information that we're receiving at this time. So with that note, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Questions or comments? Trustee Armstrong.
Through you, Mr. Chair. In the news recently, there seems to be a trend in newcomers returning to their home countries due to pandemic conditions. Are we factoring this into the enrollment numbers? And is this what you are seeing?
So thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. We are seeing a reduction in our enrollment projections. So that would be the newcomers to Canada, that definitely would be an impact on our enrollment projections. And so that's why we did have an adjustment last year, a downplay of 2%. And that's why our projections for the upcoming year are only at about 2%, where we would if we didn't have the pandemic, we'd probably be closer to the 3%. So that's already being incorporated into our projections as best as we can predict.
Thank you.
Trustee Curry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Superintendent Shimmons. You mentioned when you were talking about enrollment, stability funding. Could you just give us a definition or an explanation of what that is? I know we're not going to get it this year, but what it is and how much we're talking?
So thank you, Mr. Chair. Stability, I call it stability funding. I believe the official term is stabilization funding. So we were not eligible for that funding this year because our enrollment projections, we were actually very, very close to what our projections were for October. Trying to recall, I think we were off maybe 100 kids, maybe 70 kids in October. So that was very close. But for some boards, their enrollment, they staffed at what their projections were. So they incurred the costs. But because of the pandemic, those students didn't show up. So their revenues plummeted considerably. So the ministry supplemented that gap by a stabilization funding. So for our purposes, our projections were close to what our actual on the ground enrollment was in October.
So Mr. Chair, can I supplemental?
Go ahead.
So it's more or less related to the pandemic. I mean, it's a pandemic. It came about as a result of the pandemic. It isn't something that's traditional.
Correct. This was a one-time funding related to the pandemic.
Oh, and we didn't get any anyways.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any other questions? Trustee Armstrong?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So normally we are able to go into the accumulated surplus by 1%. Last year, they allowed us to go into 2%. Have you heard anything on that for this upcoming year?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. We've not received an update on that. So the standard regulation prior to the pandemic has always been 1%. However, there are restrictions around that still. So even though the money is there, we're not permitted to dip into that accumulated surplus reserve to pay ongoing operating costs, because that would be called a structural shortfall or a structural deficit. That's only there, and that's what we did do this year, was one-time items that we know won't be happening the following year. So the criteria around dipping into those reserves are still in place, up to the 1%. Whether they go up to the 2%, we have not heard.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, can I have a mover, please? Trustee Coburn, seconded by Trustee Simpson. That the memorandum from the Superintendent of Finance and Administration dated March the 3rd, 2021, entitled 2021-2022 Budget Process and Guidelines to be received. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, Superintendent Schimmons. Item M, new business, there is none. Notice of motions, there is none. Confirmation of the action report of February 23rd, 2021. Can I have a mover, please? Trustee Curry and Trustee Coburn. That the action report covering the period of February 23rd, 2021 be received. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Inquiries, administrative announcements. Mr. Director? None?
No announcements, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Inquiries, a motion to adjourn at 8:41. Trustee McEwen, second by Trustee Armstrong. That the regular board meeting of the board of May 9, 2021 be adjourned at 8:40. Oh, it's 8:42 now p.m. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.